Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council for March 14th, 2023. We acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukanamakis, the unceded traditional territory of Yakut Akukliat, and we recognize that we live and work in their vast land. Akanahunik are from Yakut Akukliat and are members of the Tanaha speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I'll call this meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted by in-person and electronic means in accordance with Council Procedure Bylaw number 2446. I'll ask for a mover and seconder of the following staff recommendation. The communication link to the specified place for this meeting is interrupted and cannot be restored within 15 minutes. The meeting shall adjourn and reconvene to the soonest possible time that the quorum can be achieved and the public notice requirements met. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Isaac. Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous.
And just in case everyone knows, Councillor Mason's present online.
Welcome, Councillor Mason. Thank you for joining us. Not yet sunburned. I will ask for approval of the agenda and any late items. So a mover, please. Seconder, sorry, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? Late items. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for adoption of the minutes of the previous council meeting, the minutes of the regular council meeting held on February 20th, 2023. Councillor Audie Kelly, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. So I'll open the floor to public participation. For members of the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, excluding matters for which speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or the adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. And finally, a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And I'll ask Mr. Rose, is there anyone who's indicated they wish to speak?
We have one participant online, Christopher Bruce, who would like to speak.
Go ahead, Mr. Inglis.
Can you hear me? Hello.
We can.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris Inglis. Just a few things, Mayor, I want to bring to your attention and also to the Council's attention. I just did some looking in this week at the budget, and there's really some cost savings here. I think the fire hall is overloaded really at 1.7 million. You got 3 people at the top there. Look at the number of city employees that are driving city-owned vehicles and taking them home with the cost of a vehicle's insurance, fuel. Like there's some huge savings here, and I'd be curious to know how many people at the top of the fire list, the 3 fire chief, assistant fire chief, and fire prevention, you know, what if they all got vehicles, and how many city employees take vehicles home. There's a huge cost savings there. I think they're overloaded on the staff part in the fire hall. I think they're overloaded at City Hall. And you know, how many times have you called out a full plow and there's not been a full plow, but you called everybody out? My recollection that I can find records of, it happened 4 times this year already. So all of these stuff add up. And also too, when you're using the snow blower down in the annex and also in the airport subdivision, I talked to former Jim Pigeon, Public Works superintendent for 40 years. He never used trucks to haul the snow away. All that is cost savings. They only blew the snow on boulevards. So I really hope you take a deep look at some of these expenses the staff is presenting to you, because they don't need to be there. Why was it done differently before when we got more snow? We get less snow now and you're spending more money to do the same job differently and cost more money. So those are my thoughts on the budget. I will have some more comments later in the process when will we be able to speak during the budget process?
Yeah, there is a second public participation period for the budget this meeting.
Okay, I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Mr. Inglis. Is there anyone else, Ms. Rhodes?
There are no other hands up. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If I may, your worship, I would just, youth councillor Kerber is present and online as attendees. We're trying to get her promoted to the session. I want to make sure that you need to.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that clarification there.
And so
Sorry,
she advises that it's not working.
okay.
So
Is she able
she's
to?
going to try to refresh her connection,
Okay.
your worship. So I apologize for the interruption on that, but
No. Is she, was she at least able to watch this?
yeah, she's present.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. This moves us on to item number 8, a report from Director Burditt on the 5-year financial plan bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Elgin. Hello, council. Just a short presentation from me tonight summarizing the last 3 budget meetings and also introducing the bylaw tables that form the base of our operational and capital plan for the year. Quick agenda. I'll start with a few slides that present that table that's part of the bylaw. A recap of the capital plan and major upcoming projects, our funding shortfall for 2023, and a summary of our revenue increases for 2023 and our incremental cost drivers. We'll then move on to the proposed tax rate increase. And I also have a couple of slides on the assessment value of a home and the relationship between that and property tax. A lot of these slides will be the 3rd time council has seen them. So if I'm moving too fast and you have any questions, as always, please interrupt me. This is our schedule of the 2023 budget process, and the intent for this evening is for council to give first, second readings of the financial plan bylaw. Our next budget meeting is scheduled to be next Tuesday for the intended 3rd reading of the financial plan bylaw. This slide is the revenue section of the bylaw. The 2023 column has been the majority of the content that's presented to council at the previous 3 budget meetings. 2024, or year 2 of this budget, is what gives staff the legal authority to continue operations when next year comes. I think the 2 numbers here that will most obviously jump out is the 10.5 for 2024 and $7 million in 2025. And those numbers they're more as a placeholder for the protective services facility and the project that we're calling the CNL right away, which I just mean that the source of funding for those 2 projects, while according to the slides is borrowing, could still change between now and then. Notably, we're working hard to find some grants for both of these projects to help offset the costs. For this slide and the next 2, there's no historical numbers here to compare this to, and I just want to present this level of detail because this is the level of detail that council approves in the budget bylaw. The previous 3 budget meetings had quite a bit more detail presented, including historical comparatives. And for anyone watching at home who would like to find more information on any of these numbers in more detail, I encourage you to watch those meetings and read those agendas. This table is the expenses portion of our bylaw. The increases that you see over the next 5 years are purely inflationary and contractual increases, assuming a continued level of service. Obviously, a lot can change, but for now, this is what our next 5 years looks like. And then this last slide that makes up the bylaw is our transfers to and from reserves, interest and debt payments, and capital expenditures. I did have a comment from the public about those first 2 slides, and I'll just back up 2 slides here. Somebody asked why our revenue is 28 million and why our expenses is 16 million. And the difference there is our contributions to reserves and our capital plan, which is why those numbers don't quite net out, but I did want to draw attention to that. There is one late change from our last budget meeting 2 weeks ago, and it's to our sewer capital plan due to additional information since our last budget meeting. I believe Ms. Weir is online, or Mr. Hausler is here. They're present if you have any questions about this project, but in essence, due to some additional communication from the Ministry of Environment about what's required as part of our sampling program, we had to revise our original budget, which was done in July 2022, and that's been increased from 197,000 to 314,000. And also, we've been informed that some work we had planned for 2025, which was to be done after our application for a new permit, now has to be done in advance of our application for an updated permit. And so we've increased our 2024 sewer budget by 650,000. And those 2 numbers are in the tables on the previous slides. They've been updated for these. No effect on this year's taxation, but it does have an effect on our sewer reserve. This slide is a summary of our major projects for this year. The 2 largest projects at the top are grant funded, noting that the first project on the list there is still dependent on us getting the grant that we applied for. We may not get that grant, and if not, that project won't be happening. Skate park again is granted. There's a structural remediation project needed for a water reservoir. There's a roads project, which that was discussed at the capital meeting. There's a list of sewer projects that that's on the docket for this year, and this number, the 665,000, accounts for that change that I just communicated. There is the Mountain View Dike tie-in, and there's a culvert over there that's to be upgraded. Some outdoor washrooms at the aquatic center, which is funded by RMI. Some studies on our water source, and last but not least, an update for our OCP.
Councilor McIntyre.
Thank you, Worship. Just on a note on the increase on the wastewater system upgrades, previously, it was reported that roughly 44% of our projects were coming out of reserves. With the increase to the cost of wastewater to 665, what is the percentage now?
45.
45? Thank you.
That's on a future slide as well.
Okay. Sorry to jump ahead.
Problem. In this slide, you've seen before, it shows our major upcoming projects, all of which are quite large projects for an organization of our size. The sewer treatment strategy is on here again. We need to formalize a plan for the long-term viability for the Berry Creek water source. Plans and designs for our protective services facility, including a site selection. And also our water and wastewater mains, otherwise known as the CNL right-of-way, which are in an unstable slope that's potentially at imminent risk of failure, which could leave a few hundred homes without service. And this slide adds some numbers behind our 2023 capital plan. We have $14.8 million scheduled for 2023. And then this next slide, which is very small still, outlines the sources of funding for our capital plan. And again, 45% of our projects this year are funded through reserves. And speaking of reserves, here's our projected ending balances at the end of each year between now and 2027. The only change here from previous meetings is the funding of the late change to that sewer project through sewer reserves. And our ending reserve balance in 2023 is budgeted to be 11.4 million, which is up from 10.7 million in 2022. This is another slide from 2 weeks ago that I wanted to bring back for this week. It's our 5-year comparative contribution to reserve. The main difference between this year and last year is the lack of a contribution to our stabilization reserve, which is mainly because we have a full complement of RT&P officers now, so that bill is going to be bigger. And also no affordable housing reserve contribution for this year. And this slide is our projected shortfall alongside a summary of changes to major revenue and expense increases expected for 2023. New construction revenue is 167,000. Investment revenues is up. Our Elk Valley property tax sharing agreement has increased by about 6% this year. That's the one for the that we get from the province for the mines. We've got additional pool and arena revenue. But as a result of that, our recreation and pool wages are up for a couple of reasons. One is increasing service back to pre-pandemic levels. And the other is fully budgeting for the staff that was not done, not budgeted for appropriately in the past. And there is 436,000 of new positions, as we discussed on February 6th and 2 weeks ago. These came as a result of the organizational review. Thank you. There's the Parks and Rec manager, the Public Works manager, the business analyst, and the deputy fire chief. And then there's 276,000 of contractual and inflationary salary increases. Utilities and insurance, both large increases, and benefits also gone up, but we've, as I communicated before, we've saved money there because we've our WCP rate has gone down by quite a bit this year. And I just have a couple of slides here on the relationship between assessment value and property tax. In this first picture, the top row, you can see that a person's house assessment value has gone up 20%, but the city's average is 30%, meaning if, in that case, if council voted a 0% property tax increase, it's likely that that house in that picture, their taxes would actually decrease. But if council voted for a tax increase, that person's tax bill would go up by less than the town's average. And the second picture shows the opposite scenario, where the person's assessment value has gone up by more than the average. Their tax bill would go up by a little more than the average. I've got that kind of same example in word form here. So above the arrow, the orange arrow, in 2022, I've kind of intentionally rounded these numbers. Your house is assessed at $100,000. Tax rate is $5 per thousand of assessed value. That means the city collects $500 worth of property tax. Now moving on to 2023, approved tax increase is 6.8%, but your assessment value goes up by 20%. Well, in that case, the tax rate per $1,000 of assessed value, otherwise known as mill rate, actually goes down to 4.45 from $5 in 2022, which allows the city to collect $534 in 2023, which is exactly 6.8% more, not 20% more because of the assessment value. This is the impact of the budget on the average home in Fernie. Our property tax increase, coupled with water, sewer, and garbage, amounts to an additional $193 per year, or just over $16 per month. And again, this number is just for the city portion. We do collect for other jurisdictions on our property tax bills. The only other jurisdiction that I've received the information for so far is the RVEK and the provincial hospital amount. RDEK is looking at roughly a 10.2% increase, which amounts to about $46 for the average Fernie home per year. The hospital is around 4.5% increase. Noting, of course, that the hospital, the previous 3 years went up by about 30% per year, so they were promising a lower rate this year, and they delivered. But that 4.5% amounts to about an extra $11 for the average house in Fernie.
It's around us.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just the RDK dollar figure, Director Burke, I did not capture.
The dollar
Yeah, just on the RDK portion.
is about $44 for the average house.
$44.
Yeah.
44?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and feedback on Let's Talk is open until tonight, and this slide is a summary of feedback that we received so far. We've had 15 pieces of written feedback, although since I prepared this slide, we had another 8, I believe. So about 23 in total. Some major themes are concerns on overall affordability in Fernie, especially for fixed income homeowners. There were a few comments on the rolled up numbers as presented. They may not provide sufficient information. For example, one comment drew attention to it being difficult to determine if $3 million for Parks and Rec was too much. This was provided in more detail as part of previous budget meetings, and I have more detail still of what makes up these numbers. And you know, staff will reflect on a better way to present this to the public. But the reality is that Fernie owns a large amount of parks and buildings for a municipality of our size, and $3 million is what it costs to run and maintain all of those properties. There were 2 or 3 comments complimenting the budget process. There was a comment about options available to the city for providing a larger discount on property taxes to seniors or those that have been here for a long time. And while certainly a reasonable idea, the homeowner grant amounts are set by the province and not really a tool available for use by the city. There was a comment about the proposed tax increase affecting only the city portion of the property tax bill, and that's exactly right. The city's portion of a typical property tax bill makes up over half of that property tax bill. We also collect for the provincial school, the regional district, regional hospital, BC assessment, and the MFA. That said, our job here is only to balance the city's budget. All of these other jurisdictions pass their own budgets, and many of which have their own public feedback gathering process. So the 6.8% increase, though, is only applied to the city's portion of the typical property tax bill, which is about half. And with respect to the additional 8 submissions that are not on this slide, council will receive the full report after the period is closed, but to summarize those comments as well, there were 3 concerned with the level of tax increase. One person suggested a maximum of 3%, one said 0%, and one was concerned that we're in a recession. One person said this seems completely reasonable. One person was concerned about the level of subsidization at the pool versus the arena or community center. And the only comment I'd like to make with respect to that is that we collect about 20% of our costs, maybe for 15 to 20% of our costs on all of those buildings. So we don't subsidize any building more than the other by a huge amount or anything. Yeah, in terms of percentage, yeah. And so then next step, if council gives initial readings to the budget bylaw tonight, next step would be a special meeting after next week's committee to give third reading of the budget bylaw. Now I'll turn it over to council.
Thank you, Director Burdick. Council Ramdas.
No,
Oh,
Councilor Nixon has his hand.
oh, thank you, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Councilor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps that last slide that was on there, the second last slide that was on there, you don't have to go back to it, Director Burdick, but maybe you could expand on what kind of discounts that, not discounts, but what am I trying to say? Senior citizens are available to defer their taxes. Is that not true as well? Or maybe you could expand on that program, please.
Yeah, I may ask for just a few minutes to research that and a little more detail, so I can provide the most complete answer possible, if that's okay.
Of course,
Yeah.
thank you. Other questions? From Director Burgess. Well, I wanted to kind of interrupt your research for a moment. And I ask it because I believe it should be asked. We recently received word that we are receiving a grant for $2.662 million. And is there an opportunity? And I suspect I know the answer. Is there an opportunity to use that grant? Recognizing the major capital projects that are coming down, like, you know, unintended for wastewater. Is there a way to use that grant to blunt or reduce the overall tax increase in 2023?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. So the amount of that grant was just provided to us last week, but the details on what it can be used for are still a little light. I mean, they've really only said that it's for capital projects and it's used to increase our capacity for building houses. So it's to be used on like wastewater infrastructure or water infrastructure but I mean, really all they've said with respect to that is just a paragraph on their website. So there will be additional criteria that come along, just like the COVID recovery grant that we had, although it's expected that there won't be very many restrictions. We just don't really know for sure. But because it does stipulate capital projects, you know, in theory, I think you might be able to use it to pay for some of our capital plan this year, and therefore we could reduce our contributions. But then it's similar to the COVID grant where you would just be deferring those contributions to the next year. And then those funds alone, we just have so many large capital projects coming up in the next couple of years. You know, sewer alone could use all of those amounts, never mind the CNL right away and the fire hall. So, you know, those reasons, A, it's hard to recommend that we could use it, and B, I'm hesitant to use it because of what it could be used for in the near future. So those are.
No, I appreciate that perspective, Mr. Barnes.
We have been seeking clarification on restrictions and seeking guidance on usage from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and just haven't received any detail on it.
Yeah, but they have 188 communities asking the same question.
I'm sure, and I don't have either position in trying to answer each of those.
No, and I very much appreciate what you're saying. However, Mr. Bird, just unlike the COVID recovery grant, which is already in our purse, as it were, this money is not yet in our purse, but has been approved. And as such, we wouldn't be starting at a deficit that we would if we drew from the COVID recovery funds in 2024.
Right.
Is that fair?
So hypothetically, if you were to use it to reduce our contribution to reserve by 500,000, that would give taxpayers a break this year, but then next year, they're gonna have to replace that 500,000.
Right.
Again, so in my head, unless I'm understanding the math incorrectly, you're just kind of kicking that down the road. And I did read the article that Surrey is planning on using this, is that right? They were initially at 17.5%, and they wanted to use this to lower it to 12.5%. And they're using it to offset their police costs or something like that.
Sheet.
Yeah, and a nice sheet, but I just didn't understand the connection to it being used for capital projects and then using it to offset police. So I actually don't know if that's even allowed, what they're trying to do, but.
Sorry,
Veronica,
sorry through your worship too. Are we talking about the $2.62 million grant or the COVID money?
The 2.62.
Thank you.
Thank you, worship. In our previous meeting, I missed an opportunity yet again to explain why I voted down the initial 6.8%. So I just wanted to reflect on that over the last 2 weeks and really what I truly wanted to understand was, for different tax rate increases, let's say 3% or 5% tax rate increase, what would be the service level that we might expect? So that is what I was getting at. Let's hypothetically, if it is a 3% raise and not a 6.82% rise, what would the service levels look like for our citizens? I'm just asking this because I did a disservice to myself and my colleagues and the staff by asking a very long-winded question, but really what it is what's the service level that we can expect
well,
for the lower tax rate?
I very much appreciate the question, but as I understand, from Mr. Burt's previous, answer is that we would likely run with the same service level.
Okay.
But we would be kicking the increase down the road. So that at some point we'd have to play catch up, if I understand correctly. If we intend to run at the same service level, then we would be kicking a potential increase down the road. Is that correct?
Sorry, Your Worship, I didn't get it that way.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah, please.
Thank you, through Councilor Ramirez. You're asking this question independent of the question about the capital funding grant or the COVID recovery grant.
Completely.
Just strictly
Yes, yeah, just
regarding
on the tax rate.
the initial budget as presented.
Yeah.
And it is in general, in terms of the public service, generally a consistent service level with a few caveats. There's additional staff in utilities to provide the additional maintenance and repairs required in wastewater. They were funded through utility. Or funded through utility fees, thank you. And then the additional positions as noted, the business analyst and the manager in public works are designed to provide the ability to start to do analysis. The business analyst in particular, as we work through our level of service project, so that we can start to develop systems and tools to better answer questions such as that. I could currently take a budget from council to say, we'd like to see this reduced to 4% or 3% and go and work with staff to find further places where we could reduce. But what I do not have currently is a management system for the municipality that would show our service levels and allow me to pull levers up or down and increase or reduce funding and say, okay, if we reduced a full-time employee in City Hall and in snow clearing, what is the end of the road service level impact on the resident? Like I have enough data and I don't have, nor do many of us, have the ability to say, okay, at that level of detail change, what is the impact for snow clearing if we trim $60,000 out of the entire snow clearing budget? Because there are enough unknowns from requests for service to equipment breaking down to the amount of snow that falls in a year. And we are only a matter of months into having a business analyst starting to work on these projects with us as a municipality. So I have to say, in some ways, we're not equipped to answer that question in perhaps as sophisticated a way as you may be accustomed to.
Don't do that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Councilor Ramirez is asking an excellent question. But I'd like to take a slightly different approach to answering it than Mr. Flornowski did. I think that the service levels and projects and so on that go on in the city right now that staff has brought to us, which are going to cost money, come from the priorities that council has set. If council wants to lower taxes. And to meet that lowering, lower service levels, the direction for the lowering of service should come from council, not from staff. I think if this council decides that we would like to downgrade the amount of snow clearing or downgrade the effectiveness of the fire hall or downgrade the likelihood of meeting our wastewater requirements for the province and accept the risks and so on, et cetera, whatever we want to do in order to get a lower tax level, then I think council should get decided and give direction to staff. Now, I think staff are an excellent resource and we can ask them what the repercussions of X, Y, and Z actions would be. And then we can send them off to go and do that and lower taxes. But service levels, the quality of the work that's done in the city and how important it is comes from here. We give direction to staff to do that. We're responsible. If we want to lower taxes, we lower service level. That's my opinion.
Councilor Allen.
And I agree with Councilman Patrick. I'm glad to hear that the direction that the business analyst is going, and part of their function is so that when questions like this are raised, we can have some metrics, we can have some data, but focusing on what that number of increase is the wrong question at this stage. We need to be focusing on what are the service levels that we want to deliver, what are the community's expectations, and this is what it's going to cost. And as that number just gets spit out, and the percentage increase or decrease is just a byproduct of the expectations that have been set.
Yeah, which brings us back to a full circle question we've had at this council table before about this level of satisfaction with the services that we receive, and we need to do some data analysis of that and some gathering to understand what that. Just because again, I'd like a bit of clarity on because the number, I apologize, Director Burdick, but for the work with MOE, Ministry of Environment, like what has happened there in terms of, because I think the analogy, the analysis was some of the work we anticipated doing after coming to agreement is now happening before. Can maybe Mr. Heiser can speak to what that looks like?
I'll hand it off to Manager Weir. She's
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to speak to that. Could you hear me?
We can.
So the main change in the application procedure is that we originally understood the scope to be that we were looking to define the effluent limits of discharging waste treated effluent to the Elk River. And then from there, we would design the required upgrades and build the required upgrades. The ministry has since clarified that not only should we define the effluent limits by doing a complex environmental impact study of the elk, we should design the upgrades required, and then they will give us a permit to meet those effluent limits and design the upgrades required. So it's we would have had to expend the money anyways to design the upgrades required. It's just we need it before the permit can be applied for now.
So given how critical that permit is, that's been pulled for, that design piece is now being pulled forward. Thank you. That's helpful. Mr. Baranowski, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just a comment on, the recap, I guess, the whole big picture before we can design, we're undergoing a clean year of extensive sampling to determine those effluent limits before we design. So that we're still undergoing, a year before we can look at design, then we design, then hopefully we get our permit. And beyond that, as a reminder, then we start looking at a 5-year liquid waste management plan project.
Thank you. And are we comfortable with the number we're projecting for at least the initial design piece, or do we have a?
I would say no, and I see Ms. Weir putting her hand up.
Yeah, I would agree with Director Hauser. No, that is a ballpark number at this point, and each step, as we define the effluent limits, we will better understand what additional treatment might be required, and then we'll have to design that additional treatment. And so the number or different options for additional treatment will highly impact both the engineering and construction costs that we incur in the future.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Councilor Kelly.
Through your worship to Director Heisler. Director Heisler, you said the clean year. We've already started testing, yes? So like, when does the clean year start now? Has it already started?
Yeah, Ms. Weir can jump in, but I believe we're about a month or two into it.
Thank you. Ms. Weir hasn't shook her head, so.
That's correct. We've gotten started. We've mostly been working to determine the sampling locations and the sampling requirements that meet the ministry's requirements, and we've just started the sampling program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ware. Director Burke.
Thank you. I have an answer to Councilor Nixon's question. It's a provincial program. If you Google, you can apply for or renew a property tax deferment program. There's one of 3 criteria you have to meet right off the hop. You have to be 55 or older during the current year, or a surviving spouse of any age, or a person with disabilities. If you meet one of those 3, there's then a whole other list of other criteria that you have to meet, which I won't get into, but it's all on their website here. And then it's not a discount on your property tax, it's treated as a deferment, which they treat it kind of like a low interest loan. The only thing I would say about it is if you are applying to renew, especially if you're applying for the first time, it says if you're denied this deferment and it's after when your property taxes are due, you're still going to owe your property taxes and you'll have to pay the penalty, which is very strict. It's 10% immediately. If you're applying and waiting, I highly recommend still paying your property tax, or apply as soon as you get your property tax notice to give them the most time to review your application. But you can find a lot more detail on this online on the province's website.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Burdick.
Any other questions? Comments? If none, I'll call the question.
The staff recommendation is a 5-year financial plan, 2023-2027, bylaw number 2487, 2023, be given first and second readings.
Move it. Seconded by Councilor McIver. Any further discussion? Councilor Schussman.
This is an excellent document, by the way. Everything's quite well put together here. I feel I've done a disservice to my voters in voting for this previously, having not considered fully the trade-offs. At the moment, it is hard times for everybody. We're all making trade-offs. And I understand that this everything has to come from somewhere, and we are struggling to come up with cash for infrastructure here. I feel we should consider, if we were to make some trade-offs, what exactly would they be before I feel comfortable proceeding. If there's anything non-core that we could touch, that could be something we really take an eye to. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilor Rounds.
Your worship, could we put in a motion, if it would be possible, to consider Schussman's comment here?
If he wants to formulate the motion, we can.
If I may, your worship, before we do that, were we to make something like that motion, Director McConnell, and that were to pass, what would the process be? I guess what I'm asking here.
With respect to your worship, I'm going to take a couple moments to talk to my colleagues, but I would suggest that if there's a motion on the table, it would be very clear, as Councilor McIsaac suggested, indicating, like, right now, there's a financial plan that shows a tax increase of 6.82%. And if there's to be an amendment to that, it would be a specific, a target with a potential service level that would be identified as something that would be considered. And then if the motion's moved and seconded, I would suggest that at that time, staff go do the math so that we can answer the question to what that looks like prior to the motion being voted on. Such that if the motion is moved and seconded, staff are then able to answer the question, what does that look like? Because if the motion passes, then technically we are amending the bylaw without necessarily knowing the information. So that's, if I would welcome input from my deputy, though, if she has a recommendation that might be different. Not looking like she's thinking differently from what I'm suggesting. And essentially what I'm saying is that because we've got a moved and seconded financial plan, and if we're going to make amendments to it, before we vote on the amendment, let's ensure council has the information that it's requesting.
Councilman Dodd.
Thank you, worship. While everyone's pondering the implications of that, I'd like to propose an alternate path. I recognize that there are concerns that have been raised about the affordability of this, but as we've all learned at LGLA, there's no, all money comes eventually. You can either pay this year, next year, the year after, or whatever you're going to pay. But the way to not pay the extensive amount is to reduce some projects or service levels. This is, we don't have the information sitting right here at the table right now to pick and choose among service levels and capital projects to reduce right now. What I would propose we do is move forward with the current financial plan, which has been well thought out and so on, but invigorate council to review the service level and capital projects during this year in order to reduce tax levels for next year. Because that will have longer term impact. We're able to make changes over this year for next year, that will also not just impact next year, but the year after and the year after and the year after, they haven't made that change. This is fairly late in the game to make this change. And it's going to require quite a bit of rejigging, and I, for one, would like to have a lot of information before we start taking scissors to various service levels that have been set so far. But given a year to do that, I think we probably could find some savings, and we could then take those savings to the tax rate for the next year and the year after and so on. That would be my proposal for moving forward.
Yeah, no, I very much appreciate that, not least of all, being only 4 months in the job. I feel like making we knew these would be difficult decisions, but and the comment we made in the past about the lack of perfect information, I'd like to be better informed in terms of making these decisions on behalf of the community. Sympathetic, of course, to the situation that people find themselves in terms of inflation and other costs that they're incurring. That being better informed through a year with a year and let's say a year and 4 months under our belt, although I understand we're moving accelerating our budget process for next year. I would be more comfortable tackling those questions and attempting to reduce our taxes for residents over the next year. Councilor Hamilton, then Councilor Hamilton.
Thank you. I think that that's a fantastic idea. I've made the point before, and I'll make it, but I'll make it again. The reason why we find ourselves in this financial position right now is because of past decisions that focus solely on reducing the cost today and not looking into the future as to what the future costs might be. I am not at all in support of looking to rejig today's budget because it might save people a few dollars today. I'm fully sympathetic as everybody else is with the cost escalations everywhere. This increase, however, is actually less than the BC Consumer Price Index increase of last year. So we've actually come in with a budget less than the cost of it, than inflationary costs of just day-to-day things. Tremendous work by staff. if we're gonna go back to square one right now, you know, are we trying to save a couple dollars? What is the cost in staff time of going back and rebuilding all these numbers? What is the actual trade-off here? So to Councillor McIsaac's recommendation or suggestion, I think it's exactly that. Like, as a council, that's the discussion we have over the next couple months into next year, leading up to next year's budget is what are the service levels? Where do we want to see reductions so that we can reduce the tax burden on the community? And hopefully, you know, over the next year, we get a lot more feedback. 23 comments on the budget process. I think, I'm not sure if they're separate from the previous ones, but even not, if they're in addition, you know, that's 50 comments in total. Some support, some against, but we can't make decisions if the community is not providing us feedback in the public forum.
Your worship, all I can say is you never have perfect information. The kind of information we'll be getting will always be imperfect. But what is going to be real is the out-of-pocket expense for our citizens. That is for real. So we just have to consider that.
Yes, and I am, as I've said, extremely sympathetic to that. We're all feeling it. And some of us in the community, admittedly more than others. So I'm certainly sympathetic to that, but I'm also conscious of the fact that while we're elected for a 4-year term, our goal is to set this community on a path for ultimate sustainability and success. I worry about, you forgive the phrasing, but nickel and diming our budget at this juncture in a way that hamstrings us in the future. And we have all seen and had in-depth conversations about asset management and our infrastructure deficit. And we don't have to, you know, we've seen on the charts this evening what an uphill battle that is. And I'm sympathetic to the future citizens of this community as well, but I don't want to burden them further. And by future, I mean ourselves and our children and so on. I don't want to necessarily burden them further with something we haven't addressed today, which would be a considerable problem. It will only grow if we don't deal with start doing it now. Sorry, procedurally. Sorry, did you have a comment?
No, not as such.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, on the table.
For first and second reading.
For first and second reading.
And no motion.
No amendments. Thank you. I will call a question. We have over a second.
Yes, Councillors Hamilton and McIsaac.
Thank you. All in favor? Councillor Nixon, votes in affirmative. All opposed? Thank you. So that moves us on to item number 9, which is public input for the 2023 to 2028 financial plan. So again, once again, I'd like to open the floor to public participation. And I'll just read the following. A speaker who wishes to take part in public consultation to the financial plan by electronic means must have their proper name as their display name for participation and must make their video feed accessible to be viewed by all in attendance. Speakers shall address all comments through the presiding member, which is me. Speakers shall restrict their remarks to the proposed financial plan. No material, including digital and printed materials, will be accepted for this part of the consultation, and persons wishing to provide digital or printed materials are encouraged to do so through Let's Talk Fernie or via email at letstalk@fernie.ca or by submitting written comments to City Hall by email. And a speaker may address the meeting once for a maximum of 3 minutes. And I'll turn to Ms. Rhodes.
We have Christopher Bruce wishing to speak, your worship.
Go ahead, Mr. Inglis. Do you have video?
Do I have video?
Yeah.
I don't know, your worship. I'm on the side of Highway 1 traveling back from Vancouver right now, pulled off in the safe area. So I don't know if I have video.
Okay, fair enough. Go ahead. Please make your
Okay.
comments.
Yeah, your worship. One question I was curious about is the budget. How much would you have to reduce costs in order to reduce percentage or a 0.5%? Would it be like per 100,000? Like for every $100,000 saved, does that reduce the taxes by 1%, 1.5%? What is the formula there with the current budget?
It's just under 81,000 per percentage.
Did you hear that, Mr. Inglis?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Director Burden. I appreciate that. Like I said, your worship and council, there is some cost savings there. And then just to roll them over and say, we got to go with this now. There's just, like I said, my mom is one of the ones, original Fernieite. And, you know, it's tough to even defer and still live here. It's just, you know, there's got to be all other ways of saving money. I just don't think you've looked into deep enough. And some of my comments too, concerning when one of the councilmen brought up, Councilor Hamilton, I think, brought up how many participants and feedback. Well, you know what? The number one feedback would be Facebook comments. And this mayor and this current council said one of the major things back in October and November, we're going to get those comments turned on. Well, it doesn't take a council meeting to get these comments turned on. I think you would have got more feedback as you posted the budget process on the City of Fernie page, and you would have got comments there, and you would have got more feedback than 28 replies or 50 total if you would stick to what your campaign promises were and turn Facebook comments back on and engage the community more. I don't know what the delay is in that. To me, it seems ridiculous 4 months later, and we're still asking about it. So I think some of the burden falls on the mayor and council, current mayor and council, of some of the things you said you would do, and 4 months later, we're still asking for it. You kind of want answers to your own questions, but you're not giving the people the opportunity or a chance to give those answers when you ask it on your own Facebook page. Those are my comments. And like I said, there's other ways to save, and you really got to look at the fire hall. And also too, I just want to add, if you Google City of Fernie staff, it comes up 51 members. I don't believe the City of Fernie employs 51 members, workers at city yards, and I'm not including the fire department or the pool. So that's some of the stuff you got to look at. You really have more staff members employed than you do city workers, and you're talking about service levels. You got to really have a hard look at these numbers. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Inglis. Ms. Rose, is there anyone else?
No, your worship, I'm not seeing anyone else online.
Thanks so much. Which moves us on to item number 10, correspondence. A information update from the Health City Lead Report. Any comments on that? Hearing none, we will move on to reports from council. And start with Councilor Hamilton. That's okay.
Certainly, thank you very much, Your Worship. Last weekend, partook in a number of the Grizz Days festivities. It was a fantastic time. Want to congratulate the chamber for putting that event on again, and everybody who volunteered and participated. As well, spent a couple days in Kimberley last week as part of the LGLA, the Local Government Leadership Academy, a 3-day conference workshop for elected officials to go over everything that it is about being an elected official, and came back with some ideas and some information that I'm looking forward to putting into work here.
Thank you. Councilor Schuster.
Yeah, I also made it out on the Grizz Days festivities, and I'd like to thank the mayor for the ride. It was excellent. It was a great time. And definitely been getting a lot of feedback about the budget. Not as dire as some may think it, but there's definitely some criticisms, but yeah, also the conference there. Definitely learned an awful lot. That was a real eye opener for me. I think that there's some serious value in that. So that's all from Councillor Schussman.
Council, how do you go?
I too enjoyed participating in Grizz Days and with my fellow hockey moms selling some wristbands, and want to congratulate all the volunteers that worked on it. I also continue to engage with folks about budget 2023, and I do share their concerns about the economy and the state of the world. I was fortunate to attend a Ghost Rider playoff game, and where the fundraiser was held for our young Fernie citizen, Steve Tolfrey. Steve, I just want to say we send our love and support to you and your family. Fight like a porcupine, buddy. And to the Ghost Riders, congrats on a really great season. I know the loss was disappointing, but you guys really were awesome. And next year, there's great things going to happen for you. I celebrated International Women's Day, and I wanted to highlight the fact that the city does have some really talented women on staff, and young councillor Kylie, who is stepping up for her generation. And I want to say how proud I am of all of the women in the organization. I also was in attending at the elected official seminar with with Mayor Nick and my fellow councillors. I learned a great deal of things. Really was glad to talk to other cities and learn that we are not the only ones that are struggling. They are also struggling with budget and things like that. Most of them looking at tax increases in excess of 6% as well. And I did want to say that I did really enjoy spending time as part of Team Fernie. And thank you to all of the citizens in Fernie who have put your faith in us. We are really grateful.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden.
Oh, I don't know why I like that. Thank you. I too, I'll just throw a couple extra coats of paint on the current comments. Really enjoyed Grizz Days this year. It was amazing and very much, and lots of great events. I also went to LGLA. This is my third time there, and I was very interested to see about 25% of the people in attendance have been there in 3 terms or more, and it really underscored for me that there's no end to the learning in local government. In fact, I really feel a bit of a victim of the Dunning-Kruger effect, in that the longer I hear, the less I feel like I know for certain. One comment I want to make was that the finance section at the LGLA was painfully short for the amount of information that was necessary. And there could be an opportunity for us to consider getting Linda Time to come to Fernie and do a more extensive discussion, including some of the sections that were skipped over because of time constraints. So I think that'd be something that'd be worth discussing, possibly at our strategic discussions or a future council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor
Thank you, Richard. My colleagues covered all the things that I had written down here. I too attended LGLA, and for me, the biggest learning from the session was the realization that we got a best-in-class team here. For the staff is supremely knowledgeable. People from other communities have great things to say about our staff's ability to deliver. We have excellent experience on this council, which is also truly remarkable. Fearless leader review, which is good. And more importantly, your worship, just my realization with the amount of engagement we have with our citizens too. I understand 50 people, 23 people. Sounds like a small number, but really when I was talking to other communities, it's far less there. And when you look at some of the attention our citizens give to our council meetings via Facebook, and we look at some of those numbers, it's pretty remarkable. So anyway, my biggest takeaway from LGLI was, all critical pieces are in place for us to be successful for the next year and the term. We just have to, it's time for us to execute on our strategies.
Thank you. John Dixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've gonna say the same thing, Grizz Days, LGLA. The more I learn, the more I know that I don't know very much. And I also want to say that it's much easier to put on a ski jacket versus sunscreen.
So I was a bit premature when I said you're not yet sunburned.
Yeah. So anyways, thank you for letting me zoom in. This is a very good council procedure bylaw for sure. Thank you.
Well, thank you for making the effort. It's not everyone who would do that, and I appreciate everyone's reports.
Your Worship, I
Yes,
imagine you probably want to grant this one first. You, Councilor Fernie, has put her hand up.
oh, there she is.
Hi, is the audio going through?
The audio comes through.
Okay.
Thank you.
My report for these past few weeks, I got my wisdom teeth out, so I was down for a week or two and didn't get to go to Grizz Days, but I was able to support our Fernie Ghost Riders. They had a very good season, a bit of a sad loss, that's okay. And then with British Columbia Youth Parliament, I have been participating in the Southern Interior Bottle Drive. And then at school, the student council has been working hard to put on a presentation for World Down Syndrome Day. That is usually on Tuesday the 21st. However, we will be on spring break, so we are participating on doing a little assembly early. And then for those of you on the actual day, it is represented by wearing crazy socks. So on the 21st, if you guys wear some crazy socks, that would be awesome. But yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Crazy socks. Thank you. Got it covered already.
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you for that, Youth Councilor Fairbrother. I'm sorry, I didn't know your hand was up. Yeah, so not a lot of additional stuff. I know Councilor Kelly has asked for a report. I will put a detailed report together, but it's been a very busy time, so I will have, that's on my to-do list, I promise. Grizz Days, for those who don't know, when Councilor Shoesmith was thanking me for the ride, it was in the bed race, and he leapt from his team onto our bed, and consequently slowed it. It cost us a victory. But it was great fun, and Grizz Days was just a really great showing of community spirit. I was super impressed. You know, I probably had the best seat in the house in terms of riding down 2nd Avenue on the fire truck with Chief Morgan, who is a wizard at feathering that thing along without running the Grizz over. I thought that was pretty impressive on its own. So yeah, I really enjoyed it and all the events we were able to attend. It was great fun. As well, great showing from the Ghost Riders, and it was a tough loss, but boy, you know, they knocked out the first place team, and you know, we're all very proud of them. And yeah, I don't have much to add on the local government leadership academy, except that, like everyone, was very grateful to attend and learned a ton. And I'm grateful to hear Councilor McCarthy say that the more he knows, the less he feels, the more he learns, the less he feels he knows, which I, you know, being 4 months in, you know, I thought be over the hump by now, but thank goodness it's going to take forever. There is a ton to learn, and I really appreciate that perspective. Yeah, and the wisdom of some of the long time folks that were there, yeah, it was very helpful. I met a fellow that Mr. McConnell knows from back in the day, which I thought was Frank Leonard, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah, so thanks everyone. Thanks for this evening for all the hard work this coming to this. I appreciate this, and I appreciate council for the clear and invested conversation, so thank you for the debate, I appreciate that as well. On that note, am I closing the meeting or we start a second?
No, it's, I'd like to recommend the resolution.
Would you please?
So the staff recommendation is that the meeting be closed for public pursuant to section 90, sub 1, sub C and K of the community charter as the subject matter relates to labor relations or other employee relations and negotiations related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages and after review of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they are held in public.
Councilor Ramdas, seconded by Councilor Hamilton. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Is it appropriate to, at this, now that we're moving into close, to take that recess? Recess.
Yeah.